What is going on, guys? This is Yasin. So since I came back from YCS Vancouver with a lot more insight on the format, I felt like it was a good idea to make a revisit of the best decks that you can play right now in Yu-Gi-Oh, but obviously with all the information that we've got. Because obviously every single time there's a big event, people are always going to be, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it, they're always going to be copying the best decks, and there's a huge impact on what people play depending on how people performed at the most recent big event. This video is going to be going over, I believe, 22 decks that are all, you know, pretty respectable in their own way, but some being much better than others, and I'm going to be ranking them in these 5 categories. But before we go any further, you all know the drill. Smash the like and subscribe button, check out my Blue Eyes, Crystron, Lunite, and Justice Hunter spreadsheet. You can find everything on my website, yacineygo.com. Very first link at the top of the description box below. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first thing that we've got is the Mermill deck. I actually think this deck is quite interesting because if it gets hit by a turn 0 Izuna, it can actually get value off of the Poseidra right away, the Rumbling Atlantean. Same thing with turn 0 Holisu. So I think this deck actually has a very high ceiling, and it's one of those kinds of decks that can actually naturally crack boards with just Engine, and obviously it doesn't lose to Bestials and stuff like that. It's just that it's less relevant this format because Bestials are not really too popular. So, you know, it doesn't really feel like it has the biggest edge, but obviously when it goes first, it still makes an unbreakable board in the form of the Water Bearer statue. It can handle for multiple cards. So it's a cool deck, but Droll is still very popular. Molchimi Pearlia is still pretty much there in some people's side decks, not like super popular, but Fua is always going to be a thing, and you know, this deck, it just, it also could lose to itself, even though I think it's very consistent overall. So yeah, it's a good deck, I think it's very respectable, but I don't really think it's on the level of the new decks. Pure Mitsurugi is another respectable deck, so just like the Mermill deck, both of these decks, the reason why I like them is because of Dominus Impulse. And honestly, like, that's one of the most convincing arguments. I just think Dominus Impulse is unfair. That card is so incredibly good that every deck that can play it, it always moves up a notch by like 1 or 2 levels. Like, it really is that much, like, that great of a card. But Pure Mitsurugi obviously does have some consistency flaws. It is, like, naturally resilient, and obviously Murakumo is, like, a really powerful card. So when you're not getting ashed on your 1-card starter, it feels like there's not that many cards that can beat you. And it's very low to the ground because it's pure, so you play a lot of non-engine, so even when you do get interrupted by like a Chummy or something, it's not the end of the world, and it can also play some nice floodgates. And Murakumo is Exodia against Yami, so just because of that, I think it's a decent meta call. If you can build it in a really good way, I think you can make it work, but again, it is very difficult for me to justify Pure Mitsurugi being a worthy challenger or like the best deck that you can play. The Automat Raisel deck, I'm not a really big fan of because honestly, if you want to play Raisel, you might as well just abuse Murakumo, like by playing the Mitsurugi engine in your deck. Obviously, it is a lot of bricks, so that's you know, the problem with Raisel Mitsurugi. But with the Automat engine, you're playing less bricks. But obviously, all you're really doing is making rank 4s. And honestly, in a format where that matters a little less, it's not super, I don't know, it just doesn't feel good enough. Even though it was good, like last format, the NAWCQ, Mario did incredibly well with the deck. He got 6th place at the NAWCQ. I'm just not sure if I would really bother playing, you know, like this deck right now. It just doesn't really feel like it has, you know, a huge edge. Like, it sure plays a lot of hand traps, but a lot of, basically all the new decks can play a lot of hand traps. So is this really like exclusive to Raisel Automat? Not really. Malice, on the other hand, is for sure a worthy challenger without a shadow of a doubt, if not like even better, but it does have some minor consistency issues. Obviously, if you can work on that, that's cool, but it plays like the most amount of non-engine out of pretty much every deck that I can think of, like 23 hand traps, something ridiculous like that. It's quite impressive. White Forest, I think this deck, it just like, it plays a huge amount of bricks, and it still loses to Pearlia really hard. It doesn't lose to Fua, so that's cool. It loses to Droll really hard. But the fact that it loses to itself, and it's also not like the best at going second, like naturally, that's a huge turnoff. And also, it's not even like you can say that at the very least it can play Dominus Purge, because it still plays a lot of Dark Attribute monsters. If it was at least a Purge deck, I think it would have been in the respectable tier, because you would have like more hand traps against Vanquish Soul that actually would do something. But yeah, this deck just doesn't feel like it is something that you can rely on. Like, it's the kind of deck that obviously will always sack its way to like top cut, because the ceiling level is insanity, but again, the deck is still facing an uphill battle. Just look at the amount of people who, you know, come into an event with White Forest, and then look at the amount of people who top with the deck. It's not that impressive. Honestly, the conversion rate, I expected more. So I think this deck is, like, not the best, but it's obviously not bad, because otherwise it wouldn't be in this tier list. Memento is at the very top of respectable, or at the very bottom of worthy challenger, because the ceiling level is beyond insane. but it really has an issue with not being able to play enough non-engine, and that's like the reason why I'm not like a super big fan of the deck, but I still think obviously it's a fantastic deck. I don't really know how to play the deck, it's very complicated, so I'm not like the best to speak on this subject. A lot of the people that I know who play Memento, they're really good with it, and they don't have like the best success necessarily, because all it takes for you to lose with Memento is you to lose a dice roll, and then you look at your hand with like 5, 6 engine cards going second, and it's rough. It really is rough, and it's gonna happen very often. And a lot of people, they make such unbreakable boards that even if you draw like the best Memento engine hand in your deck, it's not enough. Orchest, yeah, I think like it depends on the build that you're playing. There's Orchest Phoenixmith, Orchest Mitsurugi. You know, obviously you choose the amount of bricks that you want to play in your deck. It's not a terrible strategy. There's cool things that you can do, but then again, like out of every deck that you could have played, you really chose Orchest. Like really, it's just like it still loses to like Lancia, so it's like it suffers from like the collateral damage of cards that people are already playing. It doesn't lose to Pearly and Jewel, so I'll give it that. So that's nice. Unless I guess you're playing the Mitsurugi engine, then you randomly lose to Jewel for no good reason. But I think it's a nice deck, and I guess you can technically try to squeeze in Dominus Impulse in it. So these 3 decks can play Impulse again, depending on how they're built. Phoenixmith based strategies, obviously they play a lot of hand traps, and that's a nice thing about them. But I think even though it's like, consistent, there's a lot of 1-card combos, the ceiling level is just not really there. It's like all you're really doing is like Caesar, DS Irae, Phoenixmith in Paradise, Agnum Day plays. It's just like, that's all you're doing really. And then you're controlling the game state with hand traps. I'm not like super impressed. Archmage right now is unplayable, without a shadow of a doubt. It's just not a good deck. Cyber Dragon is also unplayable. It's Cyber Dragon K9, I swear to god, it received more hype than people playing it. It just makes no sense. Like, I've seen a lot of videos on like this deck, and absolutely nobody has been playing it. And it pains me to say this, being, the #1 Cyber Dragon fan in the universe, like for sure. I have like thousands of hours of experience with this deck, like way more than anything else. And yeah, it's not good right now, I'm sorry. Sky Striker, I think it's actually not too bad, but like again, like you're giving yourself a huge disadvantage by playing Sky Striker. Like, are you playing the board breaker version with a lot of green cards where, your engage is actually drawing, or you're playing the hand trap build where your engage is basically never drawing, but at the very least you get to stop your opponent, and then, obviously like normal summon Ray is still not too bad. It's not the same thing as, I don't know, normal summoning Dormouse, but then again, like you don't need a lot of engine requirements for Sky Striker. But then again, it also bricks. When you're playing the hand trap build with like 25 hand traps, that's like a little overkill. So yeah, that's like, there's 2 ways of building Sky Striker really, and both builds have their pros and cons. They're just like, it's like impossible for this deck to be engineered to perfection because it has like intrinsic flaws of like the Sky Striker cards just not being like the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though Engage is incredible, it's just not enough, unfortunately. Life to Win, I think it's like somewhere here, maybe. Just another one of those decks where I look at it and I'm like, you have so many problems. Like, normal summon a Life to Win monster effect and then you get hit by Fua and it actually resolves. It feels like you just lose the game there. Like, it takes way too many draws for you to make like a good half board that just isn't good. And like, the only thing that you really have at this point would be hand traps. But then again, like, imagine if you're going first and then you're drawing your chummies. Like, there's a limit to the amount of hand traps that you can play that allow you to like defend yourself against the opponent. And this deck feels like the kind of deck that relies on hand traps to go second, because the actual engine of Life to Win has always been super, super weak. Like, it's very normal summon dependent, and I'm just not a big fan at all. It's just like mechanically weak as a deck, even though it has room for multiple non-engine cards. It's super consistent. It's just not enough. Like, I don't mind. Like, I don't care. Like, even though it can win a YCS, I mean, it has done so in the past at YCS Quito. I don't feel like it's in the best position right now, unfortunately. Gem Knight, this is probably at the very bottom of respectable, or maybe here. It's an okay deck, but I don't have much to say, honestly. Blue Eyes is probably a little worse than Life to Win, or maybe a little better. It can play a lot of hand traps, but it plays a huge amount of bricks, so that's a big, big, big problem. Blue Eye Spirit Dragon is a cool card. I mean, it stops Obedience Cool, it stops K9 Joe Cool. That's fantastic. It even stops the graveyard effect of Tristalos. It can negate graveyard effects. It can tag out into an Omni Negate. And obviously, when you get the ball going, with Blue Eyes, it feels like you can't lose anymore. Once you're recycling back your Drill Beam, your Barrel to your hand, the Primate Engine really does carry. I'm not gonna lie. It helps like crazy. And the fact that you can search Effect Veiler, but Effect Veiler is not going good against everyone, you know? Some decks just don't care. The Yumi deck doesn't really care about Effect Veiler, so I feel like sometimes like the edge that you theoretically would have doesn't matter. And it's just like, I don't know. This deck feels like it lacks a little something. Anyways, Vanquish Soul. Yeah, another worthy challenger for sure. It's a very good deck. Absolutely. And, you know, I think that the thing about Vanquish Soul is that when people understand the better way to play the deck, you know, with extravagance and less bricks, this is where the deck will start becoming much better. But at the current moment, people are playing a lot of bricks, even sometimes the K9 quick play spell, which is completely wrong, by the way. I feel like nobody should be playing the K9 quick play. It lost me more games than it won me. It just, like, it doesn't matter. Like, your half boards are already good enough as it is, and you're going for Paradise Smasher regardless. So why would you care about, like, a pop and, like, a werewolf? Like, it really doesn't add too much. But then again, look at the amount of bad cards that you're playing. You know, you're also playing the Vanquish Soul Trap. It's not the best to draw because it's super easy to search. And then, yeah, the K9, the Lupus, whatever. The bad Vanquish Soul cards that do nothing on their own, like Jialong, Burger, Caesar. It's rough sometimes. And you can just draw, like incorrect combination of attributes that don't work with each other. Like Vanquish Soul, Holy Sue with, like, no fire monster. You're never really getting to play the game, unfortunately. But yeah, it's still obviously a very good deck. And when it doesn't brick, it feels actually like the best deck. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I think as people as we progress into the format, this deck will probably improve and become one of the best decks when people start playing Extravagance. Regenesis, I think, is another one of those decks with an uphill battle. It's probably at the very bottom of this section, or at the very top of Unplayable. But it's not that it's unplayable. Obviously, there's ways to play the deck, and it did top a YCS. I think YCS Rhode Island. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I mean it's okay. It's really okay. Just like Pac said, this deck loses to nothing because it doesn't really do anything. Oh, it's actually one of my favorite quotes. Okay, this is Heraldic Beast. It's an alright deck. Sure, it's probably here. It can Proto Slug. That's about it. It plays a lot of bricks, a lot of fake cards. You look at your hand of like 5 Heraldic Beast monsters and you're like, fantastic. I got no play. It's unfortunate, and it can happen actually. Crystron K9, I think, is like a little better than Vanquish Soul just because there's less bricks, and the ceiling level is like really high. But the reason why I think Crystron K9 is better is because you can bridge into Crystron utilizing K9, but Vanquish Soul cannot bridge into Vanquish Soul utilizing K9, so you still need to physically draw, you know, your Holy Sue, your Mad Love, your Stake Your Soul, your Rhoda, your Holy Sue and a Dark, I always said Holy Sue, right? Whatever, you get what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I think this deck is just a little more reliable, and it also plays more non-engine, but again, like the Extravagance build is like on the same level, if not maybe a little better, because I think the actual Vanquish Soul cards themselves, when, you know, like when you're not bricking, when you're drawing like optimal, I think like a good Vanquish Soul hand is better than a good Crystron hand. Then again, that's debatable because Joe Cool reveals Solfador. I don't really think there's anything like Vanquish Soul that really translates, so, you know, both of these decks are like extremely comparable. To me, I don't really think there's like a big difference. So, you know, if you're a good Crystron player, I think you can make it work. And if you're a good Vanquish Soul player, I think you can make it work. That's probably like the best takeaway, honestly, from this video. And honestly, this is like one of the main things that you should probably always tell yourself basically every single time. Like, if you're good with a deck in Worthy Challenger, you can win the YCS. And if you're good with a deck in the Respectable tier, you can top the YCS. But I don't really think that these decks have a very high chance of winning. But then again, any deck that can top a YCS can also win. So, you know, at the end of the day, you still have to, you know, win a locals once you're top. You gotta go 5-0, which is possible with these decks, but I don't think it is possible with, like, anything here. Like, the odds are really low. Like, if you win a YCS with Blue Eyes in the current format, you deserve a standing ovation, my friend. This deck is Labyrinth. It's another deck that suffers from, like, having an uphill battle. I think it's, like, worse than... Actually, I think White Forest is still better than... I think White Forest is actually at the very top. Yeah, I'm gonna have to correct myself. But yeah, Labyrinth is probably... It's probably just better than Regenesis, and that's pretty much it. It's worse... I think it's worse than, like, all these decks. And I think Sky Striker is there. I think Automat Raisel is there. I actually think Automat Raisel is here. Or here. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Dragon Tail. It's a really cool deck. It plays a lot of hand traps. I think it's also very interchangeable with these 3 decks. There's really not too much of a gap. And I think it really speaks volume on how, you know, cool... Oh, shit. I just forgot. I forgot Yummy. How did I manage to forget Yummy? That makes absolutely no sense. You know what? I'm gonna blame it on the software that downloads my images. Yeah, there you go. I just need to, like... I just need to like redirect the blame to someone because that was like a really big epic fail. I'm like, I know for a fact that I'm forgetting like the #1 deck, but there we go. Now Yummy is in here. But yeah, obviously Dragontail has a very good Yummy matchup. That's like what I really wanted to say. And it has not the best K9, you know, matchups. Like this deck can still get overwhelmed by these hardcore combo decks because their ceiling is way, way, way too high. And if you full combo, this deck has a 0% chance of cracking the board. Like it's really not enough. Like especially with, you know, Crystron, where you have like actual Omni negations. So like these cards are not resolving. But then Vanquish Soul has like a really, really insane follow-up when it like sets everything up. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of rough for Dragontail. And it does have some consistency issues, unfortunately. It can break on too many hand traps, and then if those hand traps are ineffective, then you're gonna lose the game. But obviously, it's still really it's a really cool deck. I do like it. And Jesse Cotton managed to get top 8 at YCS Vancouver with the deck, and he was the he was not the only one. There was 3 Dragontails in total, and then there was 5 Crystron, 12 K9 Vanquish Soul, and then 7 Yummy. And yeah, Yummy obviously is gonna be the #1 best deck. This deck plays the most amount of hand traps, and it can play like 20 hand traps actually. It can really go ham, and it's also very consistent. It can play you know, 17. Okay, look, I think what people are doing right now, they're playing 17 one-card starters. So, you know, Prosperity, 3 Engage, 1 Hornet, 3 Obedient School, and then 9 Monsters. And then they're playing 2 Field Spells, 2 Yummy Surprise. So that's 21. And then they were playing 19 on Engine. So yeah, it's a very clean list. And I think this is like the configuration that allows you to have the most amount of success. Yeah, this deck, it can be built in a way where you don't really have any like terrible matchups. It's really just overall good across like the field. It's just a very safe pick. It kind of lacks a little bit of power sometimes. And against decks like Lunite, for example, which is the next deck that I wanted to talk about, it can actually struggle. Lunite, I think I'm going to put it either at the very top of Respectable or at the very bottom of Worthy Challenger. But honestly, just for the sake of this video, I'm actually going to put it at Worthy Challenger because this is one of the most underexplored strategies, under-respected, because Ligro Dancer, even if you just summon 1, you win the game on the spot. It really is an unfair card. It really doesn't take like that much for you to be able to summon it. You got some 1-card combos that can pump out triple Ligro Dancer in theory. That's, you know, that's something. That's really, 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 really scary. And this deck is ultra consistent. It is naturally good going second just with Engine because you can go Lunite, Gold Leo, search the Yellow Martin, and then you pitch it, and then you go effect, Chilling Quench, Chilling 2. And then you search your deck for the Lunite Fusion, and then you go effect, send the Kaleido Heart, Leo Dancer. My god, why did I say Kaleido? Leo Dancer from the extra deck, and then you summon Ligro Dancer, and you kind of just win the game from there. You know, it's really that simple sometimes. But yeah, this deck is super awesome. Big fan of Lunite. Yeah, I mean, it's just like the only issue is that it can't play a huge amount of non-engine, and it does feel like going second against certain boards, it has a 0% chance to win. And also, heavy poly into Vanquish Soul is not reliable because you're getting burnt by either the Vanquish Soul trap card or by Burger. And some of, this deck can actually technically out Ligro Dancer with either Arc Rebellion or with, you know, Doggeran or Kurikara, even though it's not like the most realistic thing in the world. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And finally, we've got Raisel Mitsurugi. So this is how I'm doing a difference between Raisel Mitsurugi and pure Mitsurugi and Raisel Automat. So yeah, this is not pure Raisel, obviously. But I think this deck is like interchangeable between Malice. I think the new decks did perform better than the older decks. And it wasn't just because people were getting tired of these decks, but rather because this has like some consistency issues, and then this has like obviously a lot of bricks. It gets countered by a lot of cards that are naturally being played. Like for example, Crystron plays Chaotic Elements, and this card is a consistency card, but also a board breaker. So it doubles down as like a non-engine card pretty much against Raisel Mitsurugi. So if it gets like chummied and it has to make Detonator Pass, you can draw like basically like almost no other hand trap in K9 Crystron, and you can still win. You know, you activate Chaotic Elements, it doesn't matter if it gets if it resolves or not, and then, you know, Graveyard Effect, target the Detonator, you have to self-destruct. And after that, it's really easy for K9 Crystron to win. So I think Raisel Mitsurugi is not like the best pick anymore, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad deck. Obviously, it's still a really good deck. And obviously, like I said, Droll and Pearly are still kind of like in the format because these cards are good against K9 Vanquish Soul, so it still suffers from collateral damage. I think Malice is in a better position because Lancia is actually seeing less play. As a matter of fact, I did not side Artifact Lancia myself at YCS Vancouver. And I did play against one Malice, and, you know, sometimes it happens, you know, where you play against, like, the deck, and you don't have Lancia, so you're drawing like, you're relying on drawing like real hand traps, and it doesn't feel fair because, you know, your fair hand traps against an unfair deck like Malice makes this deck feel much better. But I think if people are prepared for Malice, this deck is actually much worse. But people are not prepared for Malice, so it becomes a little better. And you can argue that it can move up in the ladder a little bit, but just for the sake of like this video, I'm gonna only put Yummy in the best tier list just because it plays the most amount of non-engine. It feels like the mathematically correct deck to play. You know, 17 one-card starters, 19 non-engine. I just think that's like extremely clean. It really is impressive how a deck can be configured in such a way. But Malice, it does have those that flaw of not having enough starters to my liking at the very least. And you know, still, like sometimes you just lose like going second to like a single interruption. Like you want like cluster pop your normal summon past turn, there you go, and then you're doing nothing. It can happen actually. But yeah, I think that's it for this tier list. You guys let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.